everybody. I feel like I've showed up to a meeting. I've got my little notebook here and I'm ready. Also, there are books that I could get off my shelves and show in this video, but I realised while editing that my new setup means that if I hold a book here, you can't really see the cover anyway, and there's a glare from the light, and also, let's be honest, it's 2 AM and I'm not getting all my books down and then putting them back up, so I'm just going to insert the covers for this video and I hope that's okay. So it seemed like everyone and their grandmother has been doing unhaul videos recently, and I love a good unhaul. I love knowing what people are getting rid of. I love the concept of, you know, sharing books, you know, like this book either didn't work for you or you liked it but you just don't want to keep it, and then you can, you know, give it to a charity shop, give it to a friend, and then the book makes its way out into the world and hopefully finds multiple new homes and is enjoyed by many new people. I love that sort of community feeling. In theory, it's one of those things that I can definitely get behind on paper, and then when push comes to shove, I just can't do it. I'm such a hoarder and it's not even funny, like it's just embarrassing at this point. Like, I genuinely have books on my shelves that I didn't enjoy that much. Why do I have them? So today, instead of an unhaul, it's sort of like a placeholder until I can get up the courage to actually do an unhaul. I've done one before. I did one about 5 years ago in 2015. I'll link it below. I look like a baby in it, so there's that. And honestly, watching that back, I don't miss any of those books, so I should just honestly get over myself and do one. Like I said, this is going to be a placeholder until I finally get up the courage to do an unhaul, and so this is going to be a books I should unhaul but I know I won't be able to, and there are several reasons, and I'll get into those for each one because they differ. So the first book series I actually want to talk about is the Matched series, and I feel like I'm mentioning this in like every video recently because you know what, it was like not relevant for about 5 years and I've mentioned it like 3 videos in a row. But anyway, let's talk about the Matched series. It's kind of iconic in its own way. It's iconic for being not great. It's one of those YA dystopian things, and basically the premise is this young teenage girl, like in this society you have to get matched up by like the government, I don't know, and basically the machine sort of glitches and it says 2 names and she's not quite sure like who is her real match. Is it her best friend, who I think is like secretly in love with her because obviously, or is it this sort of like brooding guy that she's never like seen before, and she sort of has to choose between those 2. And I remember enjoying the first book, and the second book is notorious for being boring as shit. It's just following these 2 characters as they cross a desert, and that's literally it. And I could not, for the life of me, if a gun was to my head, tell you anything about the 3rd book. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I am never going to read this series again. I'm never going to recommend or lend this series to anybody. So why do I have all 3 books of the series taking up space on my shelf? It's a very good question. I think this series was my gateway into a lot of other YA dystopian fiction that I really, really loved, sort of, you know, The Hunger Games, Divergent, and I just feel like for that reason I don't want to get rid of it. It sounds silly, and it is silly because this series does not have any sort of sentimental value in the terms of the characters and the plot. I remember literally nothing about it, but it did sort of spark that fire in me that went to seek out other things that I did love, and for that reason I just don't think I'll be able to get rid of it. I should though. Another series in a similar vein is the Delirium series by Lauren Oliver, which is another sort of dystopian thing, but it's this dystopian world where being in love is sort of against the law. It's outraged because the dystopian government thinks that people that are in love make rash decisions. They are more likely to be violent, they are more likely to lash out, they are more likely to be unpredictable because love is like an uncontrollable force, it's like a drug. And so this government has developed this serum to like stop people falling in love. And obviously this teenage girl is like, no, I'm gonna defy the system. And that's this whole series. I read all 3 books, I own all 3 books. Will I read them again? No, I will never touch those books ever again, so why are they still on my shelf? It's a similar sort of thing to the Match series, is like a sentimental value. I bought the first Delirium book when I was in the States. I did a trip in 2013 to New York, and then afterwards went to Washington to visit my good friend Becca, and I read that book during that trip, and I bought it in the US sort of floppy paperback edition, and then I obviously wanted to carry on with the series because I enjoyed the first book. But you know me, familiar theme on this channel, once I got back to the UK covers are different to the US covers, different size, format, everything. And every year Becca and I would send each other like a sort of Christmas, birthday, mush together, end of year box, big parcel to each other, and we'd always ask each other like, is there anything that you want from the UK? And she'd ask me, is there anything that you want from the States? And for 2 years I said, you know, I want the next books basically. So Becca then sent me books 2 and 3 in the Delirium series in my little Christmas parcel, and I think for that reason I don't want to get rid of this series, because it was, you know, gifted to me by a friend, and obviously it meant a lot to me at that time. It meant enough to me to ask for it, and it's a nice memory, and I don't want to get rid of them. Probably should put Maze Runner on this list. Again, I own all 3 books, and it's not a particular favourite of mine. I much preferred The Hunger Games and Divergent and sort of the main ones. I just don't ever see myself returning to these books, and also I think there were some sexual assault allegations against the author, so that's not great. But do you know what, maybe I could get rid of Maze Runner, I'm not gonna lie, maybe I could. I've written down the Throne of Glass series, but honestly I don't see myself ever unhauling that. I mean, that's the point of this video. I probably should unhaul that because it's been years since I read the most recent book. I've never finished that series. I read up to Empire of Storms, I want to say, which is it's the 5th book in the series, but I've actually read 6 books in that series because there was a prequel book of short stories. So I've got 6 books in that series, in that universe, and I've never ever felt the urge to buy and read the last one. And obviously these 6 books are quite chunky and they're taking up quite a large section of my shelf, and I just don't ever see myself finishing it or returning to that series, so why do I need to keep it? It just feels like throwing away progress. Do you know what I mean? Like, I've sunk a lot of my time into reading those 6 books, and to unhaul that series is just like admitting defeat. The best way I can describe it is it's like a loading screen. So if you were like downloading software or uploading software and like, you know, it's gradually loading and it got to like 80% loaded, would you just close the tab? No, it's 80% loaded, you don't have that far to go. Why would you close the tab? Yes, I heard that and it sounds ridiculous. We've reached this point. So the main reason for not wanting to get rid of the books that I've discussed so far has been a little bit of sentimental value, the fact that they're sort of artifacts of who I was at a certain place and time in my life, specifically my YA teen dystopian phase. But there's another sort of subcategory of books I should unhaul but won't on my shelves, and it's books with nice covers because I'm shallow as heck. Genuinely, that's what I've written in my notes. These books have nice covers, I'm being shallow. The first one fits the sort of shallow reason, but also it has a bit of sentimental value to it as well, and that is Resurrection Girls by Ava Morgan, I believe, and I read this really recently, and I think that's another thing as well. I have a bit of an aversion to getting rid of books that I bought fairly recently, because I'm like, I can't get rid of that, I only bought that in the last year, what a waste. You know, I've spent money on that recently, why would I get rid of it? That's just like throwing money away. But I think this book was a 3-star read for me, so like not bad, but nothing too memorable. It sort of takes place over summer, and it's this girl who moves into this new house, and there's like a creepy witchy house across the street, and she befriends the young girl who lives there, and then some sort of spooky things happen, but it's very suggested, and the main girl is sort of healing from the trauma of her baby brother dying, and a lot of it is about sort of the ramifications of a young child's death. And I believe the author, either during writing the book, which is scary, or after, or at some point during the writing publication process of her book, she lost one of her children, which is horrible, and I can't imagine having to go through that. So yeah, it is a very interesting read, and it's very emotive, and I do love some of the language in it, but ultimately it wasn't a book that blew me away and that I would, you know, want to return to and reread. But The cover is gorgeous, and I also bought this on my most recent trip to the States in October 2019 for Becca, same friend as before, for her wedding where I was a bridesmaid, and I bought this book on that trip when we did a little sort of, what's the word, tour of like her local town. So again, there's like a nice memory attached to it, and it has a really pretty cover, and so despite the fact that I don't see myself returning to it, I'm not gonna get rid of it. And now we're on to just the pure shallow ones. Let's kick it off with The Surface Breaks by Louise O'Neill, and I don't know if Leanne from Leanne Rose is going to come and yell at me in the comments, but I think Louise O'Neill is one of Leanne's favourite ever authors, but I think even Leanne admitted once in a comment reply to me that The Surface Breaks was not Louise O'Neill's best book, and I definitely want to read her other books, but this one sort of didn't work for me. I can't remember if I gave it 2 or 3 stars, but it is a retelling of The Little Mermaid, and I just remember the sort of feminism in it being very clunky, quite clumsy, and I just don't feel like it added that much. And I say this a lot when I talk about fairy tale retellings, but I was so spoiled so early on by reading Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber. Take a shot every time I mention it in a video. You will be hammered 24/7 because I mention it all the time. But because I read those so early on, any sort of fairy tale reimagining, retelling just never matches up. It doesn't bring anything new or interesting in the same way that Angela Carter does, and obviously it's unfair to every other author to compare them to Angela Carter because she is a goddess, a queen, an immortal among men, but I just can't help it. She lives in my head rent-free. So I was a bit disappointed when I read The Surface Breaks. I remember hyping myself up for it and it just didn't live up to those expectations, but the cover is stunning. And so I don't want to get rid of it. I own it in hardback as well, and it's a really nicely sized hardback, and I have some other hardbacks that are the same size and they just look nice on my shelf, so I don't want to get rid of it. I told you this was a shallow portion of the video, so if you want to click out now because I'm irritating you, I totally get it. I totally get it. Another one here is Aurora Rising, which honestly I should get rid of because I didn't enjoy it that much. I gave it 2 stars. I thought it was very basic. I thought the characters were all archetypes. It was very tropey. It was a sci-fi thing that had no world building in it, and I just didn't think it was enjoyable, and every single character was like the sarcastic, quippy character, and it just felt like it was trying to be like teen Avengers in space, and it just didn't earn that at all for me. But again, it's like a recent hardback that I bought in like the last year or 2. It is quite pretty, but this is one that I probably could be pushed to get rid of because it is book 1 in like a series of 3, and obviously I'm not going to read the next 2 because I didn't enjoy the first one, so I could be pushed to get rid of this one despite the fact that I sunk money into the hardcover. RIP me. This is why when COVID is over I need to just get a library membership, because I had one in my childhood, which was, you know, my saving grace. I used to spend afternoons, days, weeks in the library as a child, and since being a teen there isn't one like conveniently near me, and I just buy the books that I want, and obviously not all of them are going to be ones that are my favourites and gel with me, so I need to sign up to a library ASAP because spending too much money on nice hardbacks. I'm too easily seduced by a good hardback, which will be the common theme for the rest of the video, because another hardback I was seduced by was Sawkill Girls, and I believe I gave this again 3 stars. So like, these aren't bad books. They're not books that I want to get rid of or I should get rid of because I hated them. They're books that were decent, but 1, I never ever will return to them, and 2, there were things about them that just disappointed me a little bit. For example, Sawkill Girls I think is described as like X-Men but for teen girls, and the premise of it is this isolated island where girls have been going missing for centuries, and then this new girl moves to the island and starts to investigate what is going on, and it has sort of supernatural vibes, and the girls start developing powers. It's one of those books that felt really dull and too long and not a lot was happening, but then it also felt like it didn't fully reach its potential and it could have done more. So I don't know, I felt a bit about it, but again I own the hardback and it is very pretty. I think if somebody took this off my shelf and I just sort of closed my eyes and wasn't looking, I could get rid of it and it wouldn't really be missed that much, but it just pains me to know how much money I spent. Another one is Sorcery of Thorns, which is one that I read again and bought fairly recently. I think I read this one last year in the middle of sort of at the beginning of lockdown actually. I think same with Aurora Rising, I read those within the same month I think, and it's a really pretty big hardcover and it looks quite nice on my shelves, but I didn't like it that much. I gave it 3 stars, it was fine, it just again didn't reach its full potential for me. I was attracted to it because it's a standalone fantasy, which I was quite attracted to because I didn't really want to commit to a series at the time, and I'd heard good reviews about it. And it is also like a bookish fantasy. It's a fantasy that takes place in libraries. I love a good library. And I think I enjoyed it. It was fine. It just didn't like change my life, you know. A lot of pressure to put on a book, but you know, there are books that have changed my life and left big impacts on me that I will want to return to, and this just wasn't one of them. But the cover is so nice. Another one is Deep Blue by Jennifer Donnelly. I think this is like a Disney book, but I remember being like so blown away because this is a mermaid book and the font inside the book, like the actual font, the text of the prose is blue. I remember thinking that was the coolest thing. I didn't think that was even possible. It just completely opened my mind. And I have it in this beautiful hardback with this gorgeous blue text, and I think it has a really nice sort of, not illustrations, but like the chapter titles have swirly bits and it's very pretty. But again, it's a series and I don't see myself reading the rest in the series. I don't remember anything about the first book, so I don't need to keep it. I probably shouldn't keep it. But it's pretty. Are you getting bored of me saying that yet? And the last books on my list are again pretty hardbacks that I was seduced into buying. And I don't know if they're well-known hardbacks, so I'm just gonna grab them because they're close by. And it is these editions. I don't even know if you can see me. I'll do a close-up, don't worry, I've already got them out. So it's Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, and obviously they're matchy-matchy, and this is the publisher. Vivi? Is that what that says? Vivi Books. Are these fake? Not fake, but like, they just don't look like real books, if that makes sense. The formatting of the page is a bit strange. It's like not fully straight, it's sort of put on at an angle, like the text is an angle. I don't know where these books came from and if I'd be able to get any other classics in these editions. They're sort of deceptive because they look pretty like on the outside, but then when you open them they're quite ugly. But these are classics, so honestly it's not the end of the world if I need to get rid of these, because they are lots and lots of different beautiful editions, I'm sure, of both Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights. Yeah, I could probably get rid of these because I don't see myself picking these up just because the insides are just a bit weird. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. I'll put inserts. But yeah, I don't know. I probably could get rid of these, but they are pretty and they match. But then I don't think I'd be able to get other classics that match these ones. So maybe I should just get rid of these and then buy like, track down like matching classics. But am I gonna even read classics? Probably not. Anyway, I think those are all of the books on my shelves that I should unhaul, but I just don't see it happening. Not anytime soon anyway, maybe like in a year or something when, you know, I'm more distanced from the fact that I paid $15.99 or something for the hardback. But are there any books on your shelves that you know that you probably should unhaul and that you will never read again, but just you can't get rid of for one reason or another, whether it's a sentimental reason or a shallow, I love the cover reason? I would love to hear in the comments what those books are and make me feel less alone in being shallow and a bit stupid on the internet. I hope this video was somewhat enjoyable despite it being petty and silly and shallow and all of those other things, but I will see you soon with another video soon. Bye.